Our next speaker is András Horváth. He is a backend lead at GameAnalytics. He will present us using Druid to store and query data for thousands of mobile games. A few words about András. He has a background in telecommunications, finance, and betting industries. He developed mission-critical, high-throughput distributed systems and has an engineer's approach to big data problems. Welcome, András.
Thank you. So maybe I will need to say some words about the company, GameAnalytics. Oh, shit. Yep, sorry about it. So we are providing free analytics solution for smaller and bigger game developers, mostly mobile. But you can see the numbers, they are not true anymore. We are growing fast. And also our needs for processing and backend just growing. And we are in the process of switching over to new backend solution using Druid as the main database. Yeah, it's me. I'm pretty much not the data science people, but the other kind that was mentioned in the keynote. My background is mostly in Erlang and not really in data science. Few words about the legacy architecture. It's mostly written in Erlang, and we are using Amazon exclusively. As you may or may not know, Erlang, started out as a telecom-specific language, mostly about high reliability and high concurrency. So that seems like a good fit for our problem. And I'm proud to say that GameAnalytics has written numerous libraries to connect to Amazon-specific services, like for DynamoDB, or we even have our in-house S3 library. However, the main data processing is being done in one Erlang cluster, but a lot of the side services are still depend on Amazon's hosted services, which also don't really scale too much and are rather expensive, to be honest. So other things that are important to highlight about the legacy architecture, we are collecting all the events from all the games into S3. That sounds like a rather crude solution, but we never had any data loss except for this February when S3 was globally down. And we're using S3 pretty much as our data pipeline as well. Systems, not really microservices because they're pretty big, but systems read from input buckets and put data into their output buckets, adding various extra information on the events we have. And one of the most important parts of the backend is the MapReduce engine that actually calculates the metrics. It's a big piece of an Erlang cluster doing the MapReduce job and the business logic in one single system. It's really hard to scale it bigger. We are talking about 100,000 events a second on average. And it's really hard to add new metrics into the system. But actually, I think mine and the team's dream is to separate this MapReduce engine and the analytics calculations into two systems. It would really make for a competitive MapReduce solution once we overcome some rough edges. And it's a system where you can look into the reducers anytime. And we've been able to provide real-time metrics since the beginning, since having this system. Our data is a bit strange in the sense that we have really small games from small developers and have some hit games with millions of daily active users, and the old backend is handling both uniformly, which on the long run is not a sustainable solution. Also, we have really small games, people just playing around with it, and big studios with really specific analytics needs. So we have to provide for both of them, which can be quite hard at times. You might know a bit of Druid already, but I really say that you should read their white paper. It sounds like it's the exact fit for us. Real-time ingestion, time series database, and online data warehouse, exactly what we need. Pre-aggregates, approximate data structures, everything you can wish for. When we were looking for a new solution, we were looking into React.js as well, quite deeply. But hopefully, thankfully, we went with Druid, while, Basho is sort of in ruins nowadays. So it really fits our data. We're collecting data in time buckets, segments in Druid's parlance, and we really need filtering on specific dimensions, so it's a column-oriented database we are looking for. One big promise of Druid is that it provides better performance and better scalability. Again, our games are of very different sizes, and our data volumes are growing constantly. So having a scalable architecture is a big plus, and having something that runs well on AWS is also a big plus. As for easier maintenance, we haven't really seen those advantages yet, but it's mostly to the team's inexperience, I am afraid. If you look at Druid's infrastructure, one thing to note is that the ingestion side and the query sides are very well separated. We should be able to scale up ingestion when it's needed, when getting in historical data, or we should be able to scale up the query side, the broker and the historical nodes, where we need higher query performance. And actually, real-time processing is also possible with Druid, but it's still on our roadmap. We are pretty much doing with hourly batch jobs, ingested in deep storage and loaded into the historical nodes. Historical nodes are the actual DB nodes in Druid, and the broker is basically a middleman serving queries, either looking into the real-time nodes or querying segments from the historical node. The challenges we are facing currently is integrating Druid into the existing infrastructure. We really want to keep the event collection because it's proven well, and it should stay in Erlang for performance and reliability purposes. But currently we are running 2 backend and 2 processing systems at the same time. We're sending the data through 2 pipelines, and knowing what is where is also a challenge. And as I said, we are learning into managing Java systems. There are really big cultural and management operational differences from an Erlang system to the Java system. For example, I kept working weeks just setting the garbage collectors and tweaking the memory settings, which just works in Erlang. Again, restart strategies and error recovery is not as one would expect. Having worked on well-written Erlang systems for the last 5 years. And to be honest, Druid is still a beta product, very performant, very promising, but you face issues here and there, rough edges, undocumented things not implemented the way you would imagine. This side is here as an illustration of that, mostly for the data science people. The blue line is the error rate of our existing hyperlog implementation. The orange one are the errors of Druid's hyperlog implementation. Both are actually inside the acceptable parameters. Here we are talking about a small game with relatively low, small set sizes. So investigation turned out that Druid is missing Google's correction for a hyperlog log for small sets, and those errors are actually to be expected. It's just sometimes hard to explain customers why the one system is showing one number, the other system is another number, and it's even harder to explain them that both are correct. We are just using probabilistic data structures. So, to conclude the story, we are quite confident that we are going on using Druid and switching over the whole backend. One thing is though, Druid is for analyzing time series events. So I cannot imagine it as our only source of truth or only database solutions. You have sort of missing features there, like building subqueries or joining things is impossible or not even on the roadmap yet. So you will always have another source of data. In our case, it's data specific to the user. So something that the raw events themselves won't contain. As I said, we are really waiting for future improvements on Druid, and it seems like they are improving, and new features come out like every month now. We are nearing production-ready state with the beta environment. Already half of our daily data is being loaded and properly ingested into Druid, and we are giving access to more and more developers to the new system. And Druid opens us a lot of new possibilities. For setting the system. The first reason for looking for a new solution was not the scalability issues with the existing one, but because business logic and the MapReduce engine was so tangled together, it was impossible to add new features, query more complicated metrics, and filtering was limited. And this is exactly what a column-based database as Druid gives us, that you can really query and filter very quickly, what with our in-house analytics solution we couldn't do. One big thing which is on the roadmap is real-time ingestion. But for that, we will need to use some sort of streaming, so either Kafka or, again, as an Erlang shop, we are looking into RabbitMQ as well. Because, again, in the analytics business, hourly ingestion and showing data for the last hour is sort of good enough amongst the competitors. But GameAnalytics' killer feature was real-time analytics. So we want to keep that anyway. And we are having a new data analytics team working on new features. And my real hope is that Druid will enable that. And I'm really the last person before lunch.
So, we have a question.
Thanks for the presentation. Can you please share some performance numbers on your cluster versus sizes, relative sizes of the machines that you're running on? So how many events are you ingesting per second, or the type of volumes that you have, just to give us an indication of relative performance of Druid?
It's around 50K events a second. Again, it's only half of our data currently ingested. And we are going with batch jobs. But honestly, it's an hourly batch runs most like 20 minutes. And again, it's the same issue that our data granularity is really strange. We have very small games that are ingested in no time, and some giant ones that really take half an hour to be ingested in the current architecture.
So how much data do you have in total in the cluster on which you do the queries?
Data load started around 3 months ago. It's 30-40 terabytes of data served by the historicals.
So 40 terabytes of data,
Yes.
to real-time series. Right. So how much of that are you touching on a daily basis with your queries?
It's mostly performance tests that are touching all of the data, because we have around 100 game developers having access to the new features. So I wouldn't share exact performance numbers at this stage, because we have to see our customers' behavior, and we are noticing that they are logging in much more often nowadays.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? Here.
You said Druid has less than 100% accuracy. Can Druid be used for domains that need better accuracy?
It depends on what features of Druid you are using. So we are having a hyperlog aggregation on the number of active users, so that we can quickly serve. This is a industry standard metric, and 2% error is okay with us. We could count the distinct users in a given segment and say that's the exact number. It's just a performance issue.
Trade-off.
Yes. But that was a big design goal when switching to Druid, to be able to use approximate data structures and keep up the speed.
Okay, so I hope I'm not the only one curious about this. Can you share us one of the most popular games that?
The data team might be. We had blocks, balls versus block, but for a long time. But the new champion is. A runner was also an all-time champion. Crossroads is the new one on the top of the board.
Okay. Well, thank you, András.
Thank you.
I think we're at the lunch break, so I will be expecting you here at 2 p.m. Yeah. Thank you.